I was absolutely gobsmacked to find that Satisfactory is made by the same cheeky sods behind Valheim, Deep Rock Galactic and that mega hit Goat Simulator, if goating around is your sort of thing, that is. And yet for some reason Coffee Stain Studios ain't exactly the first name that rolls off the tongue when you're thinking about the hottest devs in town. But guess what, my pedigree chums, Satisfactory is about to change that real quick. What you have here is a proper masterpiece. I'm talking game design as tight as a gnat's arsehole, aesthetics delightful as pie, and pure gaming fun that sadly is hard to find in today's era of microtransaction bollocks. And after 2.5 years of the Cockney Gamer channel and 132 videos, we've only ever handed out our rare as hen's teeth 10/10 score to 3 games. That's right, just 3. So the real question here, lads and lasses, is whether Satisfactory is about to make it 4. Well, put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's find out just how satisfactory really is. Satisfactory is one of them rare gens where early access actually gets it spot on. 5 years in development and we're now finally hit the big 1.0 release. I've sunk more hours into those early days than I did on Pornhub, and watching it evolve has been like seeing your dodgy local pub slowly turn into a 5-star Yelp review. They've taken community feedback on board and given quality of life updates that actually matter. Now this right here is where the real magic of Satisfactory kicks in. It ain't just about chucking conveyor belts and slapdash buildings together. Instead, this game puts you at the centre of it all, like you're some sort of factory godfather. Every decision you make, every little idea that pops into your head, it's all supported by some of the slickest design tools around. You've got a UI that's got all the data you need, like a good set of lockpicks on a late night job, and it even has a story to push you forward. And let's not ignore the eye candy here. It ain't just a good looker, instead it's Margot Robbie levels of pretty with all her charm and brains as well. Every visual clue in your logistics speaks to you, telling you if you've nailed it or if you've gone and cocked it all up. Satisfactory then is constantly giving you feedback that gives every decision a rewarding conclusion. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First things first, let's break it down and see what the bloody hell Satisfactory even is. You start out touching down on an alien rock and you're working for a company called Fix It, ho hum. Your job is to strip the place bare for resources, automate the whole bloody lot, and eventually lob a rocket into space. Along the way you'll stumble across some alien tech and a few mysteries that'll keep you on your toes. But let's be real, you're here to turn this planet into your own personal factory paradise. Now in the early days you're starting from scratch. You'll be down on your knees digging up basic ore with your hands like some nerdy geologist, only to then spend more time than you'd care to admit turning that ore into refined materials, doing so by using the local crafting bench. It's the kind of grind that makes you think twice about your life choices, especially when you're combining basic iron sheets with a bucket load of screws to create reinforced metal sheets. I'm not going to sugarcoat this part of Satisfactory, people. The early game can be a right slog. I reckon a fair few players might just throw in the towel before they even see the good stuff. Sure, Satisfactory does a decent job of explaining its systems, but there's still a load of manual crafting in the beginning. You'll find yourself sitting there watching your bloke craft away while you're off making a cuppa, only to come back and realise he still hasn't crafted enough of the crap. It's enough to make you want to throw your PC out the window. But, and this is critical, push through that early grind, get your first mini factory up and running, and mate, it's utter magic. You've got ore being drilled out the ground by machines, chucked onto a conveyor belt, and then fed into a smelter to melt down into ingots. And before you know it, you've got refined raw materials pumping into an assembler, churning out those exotic goodies faster than a dodgy casino hands out losses. Once your factory's humming, you'll feel like the king of your own little empire, churning out resources by the hundreds while you sit back with your feet up. Well, not quite actually, because it's here the game gives you an existential crisis, and that's because the map they give you is absolutely huge. That's what she said. It'll take you a bloody age to go from one side to the other, but along the way you'll be tripping over all sorts of resources, creepy caves, aliens ready to have a go at you, and monsters lurking about. And to be clear here, this isn't the focal point. These creatures aren't so annoying that they aren't manageable, but rather are there to create that sense of a living, breathing alien world. The biomes ain't shy on variety either, from barren desolate deserts to lush green forests that will make you think you've stumbled into some kind of twisted paradise. And as you keep automating, you'll quickly realise one base ain't going to cull it. Instead, you're going to be going full British colonialism here, slapping down your marker across the land and building up another base to nab those newly discovered resources. And of course the automations just get more and more complicated, like a love triangle at a redneck family wedding. You'll be piecing together conveyor belts, machines and gizmos, also you can pump out even more exotic goods. And why is that, you ask? Well, it's so you can unlock even more blueprints and more recipes. It's like a never-ending loop of resource opioids that'll keep you glued to your screen until you realise your real-life electricity bill is doubled as your PC hums away long into the night and you've forgotten what the outside world looks like. It's that sense of exploration, that sense of discovery that gives Satisfactory its splendour, but it's the nuts and bolts of building that really makes you wet in your pants. Now there's a whole side to Satisfactory that you can technically ignore if you're feeling lazy, but I wouldn't recommend it if you've got any pride in your factory. I'm talking about efficiency, lads. You see, every material you yank out the ground has its own little quirks depending on how pure it is. Let's say for argument's sake your drill is pulling 60 bits of iron ore a minute from a vein, but then you clock that the machine turning them into iron ingots can only handle 30 a minute. Now, unless you fancy wasting half your ore, you'll want to slap a splitter on that conveyor belt, so now that you've got 30 bits going in one direction into one machine and another 30 going in another direction to the other machine. Simple, right? Well, wait a little bit here, because when you start adding more machines to pump out the exotic stuff, goods that might need multiple builds along the way, suddenly you're going to have machines pumping out 40 a minute, then drop down to 15 a minute, then shoot back up to 20 again. Before you know it, your little conveyor belt looks like a plate of spaghetti thrown at a wall, with materials merging, splitting, overworking and underproducing all over the shop. And just when you think your head's about to explode, boom, you unlock the ability to underclock or overclock your machines, and now you're messing about with speeds trying to squeeze every last drop of productivity out of them like they owe you money. And don't forget, your conveyor belts can be upgraded too to carry more or less depending on what you fancy. Suddenly, you've got yourself a game here that would make Rain Man proud. The goal, efficiency. You want to get to that point where one input matches one output, like a well-oiled machine. It's the kind of precision that makes you feel like a proper factory godfather, and once you get the hang of it, balancing your power needs and all the rest of it, it becomes second nature. The addiction here then starts when you're so balls deep into it that you'll be fine-tuning every bloody detail until it's perfect. But here's the beauty of it. If you couldn't give a toss about efficiency and just want to build a wild, chaotic mess of inputs and outputs, that's fine too. The game doesn't smack you around the head for it. It's your factory after all, so you do it however you like. And that brings us nicely to the end game here, where you're no longer just thinking about efficiency, you're planning to build a factory so grand, so jaw-dropping, it would make the gods of industry weep. Beauty becomes part of the equation, because now you're no longer just a bloke sticking conveyor belts together, you're an artist. You've likely got a few smaller industrial zones scattered about, maybe even a couple of side bases farming you materials on the sly, and any excess or overflow, well, you can just chuck it into a building called the Awesome Sink that in return gives you tickets to spend at a shop, and these tickets unlock cosmetics to turn a run-down Detroit into a glitzy Beverly Hills. You can coat your factory in chrome or unlock fancy architectural bits like glass windows to make your place look proper posh. As you can see, I'm going hardcore here on chrome floor for a factory that's going to be absolutely gargantuan. We're talking next level stuff here. Right now I'm working on unlocking the train systems. Yes, the map is so vast you can literally freight around tons of material like you're running your own dodgy logistics company. My plan is to slap up a second floor exclusively for material drop-offs, but I ain't stopping there. I want this place to look proper stunning. I've designed a space where nature itself punches right through floors like a Will Smith smack in the industrial face. And then there's the piece de la resistance, the space elevator. I've meticulously placed this massive building right through my factory floor, like some sort of mad scientist experiment in combining nature and machine. It's a proper work of art, lads. Now, I've seen those Minecraft builds that make you go wow, but the builds you see in Satisfactory from content creators are on a different level. They don't just look gorgeous, they bloody well work too. It's like someone's managed to make a workhorse look like a racehorse. This game then, it gets under your skin. You're sort of sitting there putting the kids to bed or nodding off in a dull work meeting, but your brain is buzzing, plotting your next big move in Satisfactory. It's the kind of game where you're always scheming, always planning, wondering how you're going to pull off that next big masterpiece of a factory. And that's what makes it so damn addictive. There is so much more to discuss, so many more details to explain in the factory building process, but it would make this video 10 times longer as it already is. The reality is this: discovering it for yourself is a delight, but even when looking for help online, you're still left to your own devices in making this place yours. The final bit of this industrial masterpiece comes down to how how you actually want to play. Yeah, sure, you can crack on solo. This game absolutely works in single player. It's going to take a bit longer to get things done, obviously, but it's a chill game, a proper thinking man's game. It's one of them you can dip in and out of between your other gaming binges without losing your mind. You'll have your moments of zen, planning your next move, sipping a cuppa and getting those machines humming. But here's where it gets proper juicy. Multiplayer. This ain't your average co-op game where you're tripping over each other like two drunks trying to dance. Instead, you and your partner ain't tethered together, which means no constant annoyance of each other. You could split the workload. One of you could focus on a particular product while the other's off scanning the map for resources, and before you know it, you're both chilling, building massive structures, working out efficiencies together and having a proper good laugh. It's this kind of banter-filled gameplay that'll have you in stitches as you watch your mate get chased by a big fuck-off spider and you decide to cheekily delete the platform that they clambered up on for safety. Lovely stuff. And let me just throw it out there, people. Dare I say it, Satisfactory is a great game for couples, especially if one of them doesn't like games all that much. Picture this, you and the missus, glass of wine in hand, booting up Satisfactory and getting balls deep in some concrete together. Wonderful stuff. Graphically, Satisfactory is an absolute stunner. Not because it's chucking around high fidelity models with all that ray tracing nonsense making every surface glisten like a stripper's oiled arsehole. Don't get me wrong, the models, they look proper nice and all that, but what really blows your socks off is how well the whole thing's been optimised. Now, I'll admit it, I'm running this on a beefy rig, but still, I ain't had a single bit of slowdown. And when you think about it, that's mad impressive. You've got a game engineer pushing thousands of pieces of ore around the map, all tied up with machinery, conveyor belts and power lines, and it's still smooth as a pint down the local. But here's where the real beauty shines. It's in the design. As the sun rises and streams through your factory windows, draping everything in warm light, it's like the game's giving you that little wink, or how your assemblers are working in perfect harmony, chugging along like a well-oiled machine, where the detailed animations sync together perfectly, almost to show it off as a dance, or the visual clues that the game provides in how efficient you're running as you watch items get shuffled along the conveyor belt. It's all oddly beautiful in its own little way. And then there's the implementation of the colour palette. The way they've matched the Alien Worlds biomes is spot on. You've got dark red forests that look like they're straight out of a horror flick, and barren orange deserts that feel as harsh as a pub fight. Every biome's got its own flavour, making the whole world feel alive and unique. What Coffee Stain's done here then is a masterclass in balance. They've given us a game that looks gorgeous, but never makes your PC throw in the towel. It's like they've handed you the keys to a monster of a factory, one so big, that's what she said, and complex, that it should send your PC screaming, but it doesn't. It's not the best looking game you've ever played this year, but it's without doubt the most well-rounded, like a bloke who's got brawn as well as brains. Now let's talk about sound, because Satisfactory deserves a proper round of applause for this one. Back to those biomes. You've got this subtle music flowing in and out as you venture around the map, giving you a heads up of when you're stepping into a new area. The music's never trying to get your heart racing or blast your ears off. Instead, it's all about those chill vibes, almost cerebral, like it's massaging your brain while you build. And mate, it's executed perfectly, like they've hired some smooth operator just to keep you in the zone. But what really impresses the most is the sheer range of sound effects. They've got a sound for bloody everything. Sliding down a slope, you'll hear that little scut sound like you're on a bobsled smacking an alien giraffe's ass with an electric bat. That thwack is oddly satisfying. The drilling of ore, the clanking of assemblers bashing metal together as they churn out goods. It's all there, lads. Every sound adds to the rich tapestry of the world around you, painting an audio picture that's just proper lush. And on top of that, they've thrown in some voice acting for the story with just enough cheeky humour to keep things ticking along. You wouldn't expect it from a game where you're basically building a factory, but what you've got here is an audio masterclass. It's the kind of sound design that'll have your eardrums having an orgasm, and that's important because when you start pushing hundreds of hours into a game of this nature, you don't ever want to feel aggrieved. Satisfactory then is a proper tour de force of game design. What starts off as a simple idea, building a factory, quickly spirals into a logistical symphony that'll have your brain doing backflips. Yeah, it's a bit tedious up front, I ain't gonna lie, and sure, it's vast, so big that some of you might feel a bit overwhelmed, but here's the thing, In a gaming industry that's churning out the same recycled bollocks over and over, where devs are burning out and remastering the same old shite, Satisfactory steps up and gives the finger to all of that. It's unique, it pushes the boundaries of game design and delivers optimizations that'll leave you gobsmacked. Here the game engine is pushing out unfathomable quantities of items or displays at any given time, and the game engine just keeps on chugging along like a champ. I've always said it, a perfect 10 score should be saved for the games that push the industry forward, that break new ground with fresh ideas and give you, the player, absolute freedom to push its limits. Satisfactory is all that and more. Honestly, it's worth double the price they're asking for, and it's going to take a lot to dethrone Satisfactory as my game of the year. Until next time, my lovelies, Reggie out.